Hey everyone, my name's Neil. Welcome to Post to Post. Thanks for joining me today. I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the teams that likely won't make the playoffs. Now, there's some teams on my list here that definitely won't make the playoffs, but there's some on the bubble that, technically, statistically, they could, or mathematically, they could make the playoffs, but I'm going to try and rule them out, basically, from this point on. Now, as I'm filming this, there are games going on, so I'm filming this on a Thursday night. You're going to see this on a Friday, so a couple of my decisions may be even altered tomorrow, and if I did this video tomorrow, maybe it would be a little different. But generally, I feel pretty good about my decisions. So some of the bubble teams are on my list of teams I don't see making the playoffs, and some of the bubble teams I just left off the list because there's a chance. So there's not too many teams on this list. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I believe. So I thought we could go through them one at a time and just kind of maybe I just think out loud and give my thoughts on every one of those 10 teams that haven't really had a good season. And some of the teams are expected to not have a good season. It's really a growth year, and some teams definitely underperformed. So let's get this going. I'm going to start off with Anaheim. So they've got currently 37 points as I'm filming this in 50 games played. There are a couple of reasons that go into my decision here, and it's just not because they're last place mathematically. Even if they were kind of on the bubble, there are reasons that I don't think they would even push to make the playoffs, even if they mathematically could and they were close. Lack of offense has been unbelievable this year for Anaheim, from Raquel to Silverberg, and I know there's been injuries and stuff too. Like, I get it, I totally get it, but even Getzlaff, I mean, there hasn't been consistent offense, and it's been so anemic, and their power play is terrible. It is absolutely terrible, and I truthfully have not watched a lot of Anaheim, but the games I have watched, they've lost every single one, I believe, and they've been very frustrating because it's a team that really should be better than last place in the division. So I think they are underperforming. I'm disappointed at where they are at. I'm going to consider this year to be a slight anomaly. I did not pick them to go into the playoffs. It's a team going through transition and roster changes and stuff. So I anticipated that they wouldn't be one of those top-tier teams like they used to be for so damn long. But I'm still a little bit disappointed in the team, and I feel like they will bounce back next year and possibly contend for a playoff spot, but we'll see. Next is the LA Kings, and they've been kind of an interesting team. I guess they technically still could make the playoffs, but I'm going to rule them out. But they've been a team that I've actually watched more than a lot of other teams in the league, and I don't really know why. They're a Pacific team. I'm in the Atlantic time zone, so it's really actually difficult for me to watch LA games. But some nights I've just not been tired and I've stayed up, and I find myself watching Kings games. And I'm not a Kings fan at all, but I've actually kind of enjoyed watching the team this year. But I've been frustrated at the same time. Very inconsistent, and they have a lot of close games. They lose a lot of games by just maybe a goal or a couple of goals, but generally the games are very close, and it's so frustrating because they just can't finish it. They just can't close it and hold a lead when they have it sometimes. And even as just a hockey fan, like, I'm kind of rooting for them because they're the underdog. I really like underdog stories, but it's been definitely frustrating. So inconsistent play. So currently they have 42 points and they've got 47 games played. So they actually have some games in hand compared to the teams around them, but still, I think that they're just maybe a little bit too far off. So San Jose, I'm going to put on my list as well. 45 points, so I think they're only 5 points back of the playoff spot, but they've got 49 games played, which is, at this time, I think 2 more than St. Louis, who has 50, potentially. I don't remember exactly, but I'm just going to say that they're not going to make it. I don't feel good. Defense, especially in their own end, has been terrible all season, and I'm not surprised by it. I'm not surprised by it. Carlson is a good hockey player. You could even argue that he's a great hockey player, but he is one of the most unreliable defensive players, not even defensemen, players in the NHL, and it drives me crazy. I really appreciate consistent defense. When I played hockey, I tried to be a very good two-way player. I didn't score a lot of goals. I always got way more assists than I got goals. I was never a goal scorer, but I always tried to concentrate on my defensive game as well. So I tend to cheer for players who kind of mimic that, really good two-way players. And Carlson is not one of those, and he drives me crazy. So the defense has been pretty bad in San Jose this year, and goaltending as well. Just terrible goaltending. And then the last thing I have on my list here is power play. 28th in the league, which is pretty much last. This team is not a 28th team ranked power play. Like, they have so many incredible offensive threats, and they just can't seem to put it together. This is a team that just a year ago, or maybe the year before that, had the ability to come back in games like it was nothing. You know how the Maple Leafs can just, sometimes the Maple Leafs get down this year by 3 or 4 goals, and then just boom, they have that ability to come back. San Jose had that ability, and they have seemed to have lost it this season. So, although I didn't technically predict them to make the playoffs, and they're roughly where I predicted them to go, it still has been there's been some frustrating games that I've watched for the San Jose Sharks. And they're my second favorite team, so I'm emotionally invested in them. Columbus is next on my list. This one's an easy one, obviously. 42 points, 51 games played, so I think they've maybe played more games than anyone else in the NHL, or tied. Domi is the first thing I have down here on my list. He was traded from Montreal. Obviously, I'm very familiar with Domi. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. They're my number one team. And we got Anderson in return, and by we I mean Montreal. So I think Montreal so far has won that trade, and you can feel free to argue that in the comments. But Domi has not been super consistent and contributed offensively, but I'm not totally blaming him because I feel like he's been mistreated by Tortorella on Columbus. So I'm not going to totally blame Domi for this year, but there seems to be maybe a fit issue. Laine, I know wasn't with the team the entire year, but he is, again, one of the worst, kind of like Carlson, one of the worst defensive players in the league. He's very frustrating to watch sometimes. And then I thought they've had kind of a bunch of mid-range players who maybe have underperformed. I'm going to pick one of my favorite players on the team, or likely my favorite player on the team, Texier. So, young kid, had a really good end to, I think it was last year, maybe the year before. Loved watching him in the playoffs. And I was expecting big things. And I've come to realize that maybe he was overperforming potentially in the playoffs and late in the season. And maybe this year's just more kind of a normal year. So maybe next year would be the true year where we kind of judge Texier. But this year I've been a little disappointed. I felt a little underwhelmed. I've figured he'd have more points and contribute a little bit more offensively. There's been injuries as well and trades. So obviously they were a bit of a seller at the deadline, which is the opposite of what they were 2 years ago, which is strange. But I don't totally blame the players. Tortorella he seems to be a very tough coach to play for after like the second or third year mark. Whenever he joins a team, it's like he can turn it around and do incredible things with not a super talented group, but he can still get them in the playoffs and still, maybe do some damage. But it seems like after that 2 or 3 year mark, he loses the room, and I think he's pretty hard on guys. I think he's rough emotionally on them, and they just kind of check out. I think they're just kind of done. Like, they show up and they play and they try, but maybe they get frustrated because they get yelled at 75 times on the bench, and they're just sick of it, so they just remove themselves emotionally, and that's frustrating. But that is the trend with Tortorella. Regardless of where he's been and where he goes, that seems to always be the trend, where he has a couple of really good years and then things just kind of fall off, the wheels fall off. So I suspect that Tortorella will actually be fired sometime in the offseason, but who knows. Detroit, so this is an odd one here because this is totally expected. It's been a growth year. They're working through fixing their cap from a long time ago. The ball has really been started and rolling now, so they're totally on the right path to getting to where they need to be. So I'm not disappointed by Detroit. They've had a better season than they did last year, which was a terrible season. Not hard to do worse. Not hard to do better. So this is totally expected by Detroit. So they're going to miss the playoffs, but I think even Red Wings fans, you guys could basically predict that. So this was a really good growth year for them. Chicago is on my list. So there's been some unavoidables with Chicago, like Jonathan Toews, the goaltending situation at the year start. And that's not all negative, though, because Lankinen came in. He's been so good. He has been so good. He's one of the best stories in the NHL this year. I really like... I can't believe I'm saying this. I really like watching Chicago because you guys know when I started the channel at the beginning of 2017, was not a fan of Chicago at all. They just won a bunch of cups, and I was just honestly kind of tired of watching them in the playoffs. And I don't typically cheer for powerhouses. I cheer for the underdog story, a team that has fallen potentially or has always been at the bottom and is on the rise back up. Those are the stories that I like to cheer for. And Chicago has never been that team until recently, until last year. And then I've been watching a bunch more Chicago this year, and it's been really enjoyable. So although they're likely not going to make the playoffs, they've been a really fun team to watch for me because it's a team I've never cheered for in the past. But now that they're kind of an underdog, I find myself, really kind of gravitating towards Chicago. So it's a fun team to watch, but unfortunately, it wasn't the best year for them, and a lot of it was uncontrollable on their part. Now, DeBrincat has had a really good year. He's my favorite player on the Chicago Blackhawks. Not only has he been a good player offensively, but defensively as well. Next time you watch Chicago, watch his defensive ability and his defensive game. It's really good. Next on the list is Buffalo. So, okay, obviously this one's an easy one. So we got the Eichel injury, the coaching absolute fail the entire year, and recently in the Buffalo Sabres history, they've got 33 points in 50 games. We got Hall not working out, Stahl not working out, bad, inconsistent goaltending. Like sometimes Carter Hutton would have a really good period and play well, and then just let in like 3 stinkers in the following period, and just be like, oh, it's like, what are you doing, Buffalo? Like how can you be this inconsistent? So there's like little glimmers of hopes I find in their games, but then it's just like it all changes at the drop of a dime. So frustrating team. Obviously, Buffalo fans are not happy with this year. Probably one of the worst years in franchise history and for the fan base. So hopefully next year things get a little bit better. But I've talked a lot about Buffalo in the last couple of months. I won't go too much more in depth. So the next team I have on my list is the Devils. They've got 37 points in 49 games played. This is a really good growth year for the Devils. I don't know if I want to say that they underperformed. I think they basically are where I thought that they would be. So sellers at the deadline, so that didn't really help them that much. Not a great defensive team at all, but this still was a good growth year in a way. Next year's going to be really interesting to see some of the core that has gone out, and there's gaps in the lineup now. So I'm going to have my eye specifically on New Jersey in the offseason. I think they're going to be a really interesting team to follow in the offseason just to see what they do. And I have a feeling that they might surprise a couple of people, or a lot of people, next year. So they're one of those teams that I don't typically pay a lot of attention to, but just their current makeup, their ability to spend some money potentially this offseason, I'm going to have my eye on them. I want to see what they're going to do. Next is the Ottawa Senators. So kind of like Detroit, kind of expected to where they are. Slightly inconsistent, though. Like there are times when they play a really, really good team in the North Division or the Canadian Division, and they beat them. And they play so damn well. Like it's amazing. And I love it because the team has really... It's a whole new team that it was even 3 years ago. So it's really cool to see the team not only have a completely new roster, but do well. So to watch them beat really good teams is exciting. Even when they play the Montreal Canadiens, which is on paper supposed to be a better team, but they beat Montreal and make them look terrible. Even though I'm disappointed that Montreal lost, I'm excited because I can see what Ottawa is doing and I can see their future and I'm excited for it. But they're inconsistent in the sense that they would play like a bad team or a team on a losing streak, and they can't do anything against them. They end up losing. It's just like, you have the Montreal Canadiens disease. That's the same thing that Montreal does. They play really good against difficult teams, and they absolutely suck against terrible teams. So I don't know what's going on in the drinking water next to the Quebec border there in Ottawa and in Montreal, but there must be something in the water because they all have the same disease, and it's not a good one. But a really good growth year for all the players, and a fun team to watch as well. So the last team I have on my list that is technically not even on my list, I don't have any notes, I just kind of put their name down, Vancouver. Now, if you look at the stats or the standings, you see Vancouver with 41 points, you can be like, how the hell is the Vancouver Canucks going to make the playoffs? They got 41 points. They're like 9 points back of Montreal, or whatever it is, or 14 points. I don't even know. But they've only played 43 games. Remember, the Vancouver Canucks were, out of commission for 3 weeks or whatever it was, so they have a lot of games to make up. Also, Vancouver's been playing very well lately. So, hypothetically, they could potentially pass Montreal. To do this, they have to go on quite the run. But it's not that impossible. It's not implausible. They could 100% do it. All they need to happen is for Calgary to play poorly and Montreal to play poorly. That's very possible. Montreal has not played well lately, and Calgary's been extremely inconsistent. They've had a couple of really, really good games lately, but they've also been very inconsistent. So it is 100% possible that Vancouver could pass Montreal. It's a long shot, but it could happen. So I didn't want to put them on the list, but I did want to talk about them. And I'm a Canadiens fan, as I mentioned, but I did predict Vancouver to finish high, so I feel like I really want them to go on a run and make the playoffs just to kind of redeem my original prediction a little bit. But yeah, so maybe I can make a video talking about the teams that did make the Stanley Cup when the teams make the playoffs. Kind of talk about some of the teams that did make the playoffs and a little bit about their year and stuff. But I'll also be doing series previews, series predictions, a full bracket prediction as well. So if you're new to the channel, would love it if you could hit the subscribe button to check those videos, and let me know down below. Hey Neil, I think you should have put this team on the list. Nashville ain't making it. Why weren't they on your list? Or how do you have Vancouver on your list? Or they're definitely not making it. Or how do you not have Vancouver on your list officially? They're not making it. There's no way they're making it. Let me know if you disagree, or if you agree. Let me know down below in the comments. And also let me know, of these teams that I had on my list, which one are you most excited to watch in the offseason? Obviously, the teams that don't make the playoffs are typically the teams that make the most amount of moves in the offseason because they're trying to fix something. So of these teams that I listed, what team interests you the most? What team are you going to follow in the offseason? Because I know that most of you, although you have your favorite team, you're kind of like me. You're more of a hockey fan than you are a specific individual team. You'll always have your favorite team, but you love hockey, right? Like you love the sport of hockey, so you watch hockey, even if your favorite team isn't playing. Chances are you're watching multiple games. So let me know what team that interests you as far as kind of moves in the offseason. Would love to know your thoughts there. So thanks, guys. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll catch you later. Adios.